How's it going, everyone? Nathan coming at you with a new video. Today's a bit of a weird subject, kind of apropos of nothing, but the other day I was playing an OU game and I was getting, frankly, my shit pushed in by a Swift Swim Wave Crash Floatzel. And I was thinking to myself, it's cool how it almost feels like every generation there's a new flavor of a Swift Swimmer. I don't think it's any secret that it's a very common ability. And people have talked about how if you ban one Swift Swimmer, there's always gonna be another one that comes up in its place and shit like that. Which is always something cool. I feel like it's such a unique ability. It's very controlling. It feels like, I always say when I'm starting a new tier of Pokemon, I love to load up a weather team because the manner in which you play a weather team is always so predictable and the same. The weather set, you go to this guy, the wall break, you go to the defensive set. The cadence is very similar. And again, I like how almost every tier or generation you play, there's a new type of Swift Swimmer that is relevant. I remember even playing Poké MMO. Shout out to anybody who's ever played that before. What an unreal mobile game, for the record. And I was playing some Poké MMO, and I took a glance at the competitive scene, and sure enough, maybe this is a bad sample size, but the first 3 games I saw involved Rain Kabutops just going off because the selection of Pokemon available in Poké MMO is different. So that's about as good as you can get for Rain, but that's still pretty amazing. So I've always loved the idea, and today I wanted to take, as you probably see by this thumbnail, as you probably see by this right here, take a beat and talk about the different Swift Swimmers and how they compare against each other. Because in my head, I've always thought of as the preeminent Swift Swimmer to be Mega Swampert. You get the Mega Evolution, you get that crazy attacking stat, you have the dual stab. It seems like it's just the ultimate Dawn. But then you have last generation Sword and Shield, a really interesting new flavor arise with a Barraskewda who has flip turns. So it's a pivot, it's banded, it's got good coverage. But even nowadays in the current generation, we're seeing Floatzel in the discussion. And if you're looking at Sword and Shield monotype, we saw a ton of Kingdra. There's all this stuff. So I wanted to go through it and talk about how they rank up against each other. Because even though they're different metas, I think we can be somewhat objective in how well they would rank. And we're going to talk about that today. We'll also talk about, I promised myself I was going to forget its name. I got it written down somewhere else. It's fine. The new guys that are on the way. So we'll talk about them too at the end. So first things first, I think this is everybody. I might be mistaken, but I think it's at least everybody relevant. There's a tier that I don't want to be too dismissive and mean of, just the I don't cares. It's really hard to think of any compelling argument to use these Pokemon at all. That's going to be Huntail, Gorebyss, Poliwrath, Seaking, Quillfish, or Maldo, certainly Relicanth, certainly Luvdisc, Lumineon. I'm actually surprised I know all these names off by heart. Beertick, it does a lot that Beertick users have for so long to make it work in the Hail. And it's still an absolute whatever ranking in the Swift Swim rankings. So Caracosta there too, and Golduck and Omastar. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say yeah. So I'm not really ordering. I might come back to these two. I'm not really ordering this tier, if I'm being honest. You could make an argument for any of these above the other. I always think about the arguments for who the bottom tiers in Super Smash Bros. Melee. People get mad as hell and be like, Bowser's the worst in the game. It can't possibly be Ness. No, you're an idiot. It's Zelda. And they'll be in these huge discussions. I'm just I don't really care, if we're being honest. That's never again. So this is really just, I don't care. I don't think there's really much of an argument any of these guys have for being even a tier above. So we will throw them all in this just mishmash here. It's going by bit. I was gonna just do this live at first, but I was really having a hard time going. I was like, wait a second, I actually have no idea how I'm gonna rank these guys. So preliminary thoughts, maybe I'll organize this after the fact. I think Swampert is probably an A. No, let me do this another way. Again, I was having trouble organizing these guys. I was having trouble sort of figuring out how things shake up, because really, how do you evaluate a Mega Swampert versus a Floatzel when they're so different, right? One is this bulky beast of a Mon who hits really hard but has a bunch of other utility like Stealth Rocks and Ice Punch and Superpower, but it's got a Mega Evolve, so it's taking up a Mega Evolution slot on your team, versus a Floatzel, which, with a Wave Crash, you might get off 2 Wave Crashes before you die completely. So in kind of classic Nathan fashion, I went to Sheets and I kind of ranked these Pokemon. Maybe not rank, actually, this isn't ordered at all, but I just wrote down some numbers to kind of contextualize a lot of this. So first of all, the speed tier they hit, I actually don't think the speed tier of any of these mons is too important, if we're being honest. Even the absolute slowest on here, Amistar, is outspeeding a Dragapult in the rain. Assuming these are all, I went for max speed actually on these, which is a little bit disingenuous because I think most of the guys that have above 80 base speed are going to choose to run a offensive nature instead of a speed based nature. But I had to do it just to make things equal on this and the calcs. And again, so with that disclaimer in mind, again, you're almost all of them are outspeeding even a base 100 Scarfer, like a Jirachi, for example, or a Celebi or whatever. And yeah, even the slowest is outspeeding a Dragapult. So, you know, you can get into stuff like, oh, Mega Swampert gets outsped by Scarf's Dragapult. Sure, I'll give you that. That's about as fast as shit gets. But for the most part, maybe I'm stupid. I don't really care about these speed tiers too much. I will admit, with the case of Barraskewda, who hits such a ridiculous speed tier here, I think there's something to be said for like, just set it and forget it, right? That's always, if you were going to use a choice Scarf Dragapult, just to like, I don't even have to sweat the tier, the speed tiers. I know this thing is faster, and that's Barraskewda to a T. This is absurd speed stat. This is like, I've used agility twice level speed stat. And I think in the case of Barraskewda, it is useful because there's lots of situations where it's the end of a rain team game and your Pelipper's dead, all your team's dead. You need Barraskewda to finish the whole job. And it's got enough firepower. Its Choice Bandit's got a good attack stat, but it doesn't have rain up. Well, guess what? Barraskewda can handle that, whereas Mega Swampert's trade hits the whole way with that base 70 speed. So I do think speed comes into effect a little bit, but it actually ended up being, once I sort of ran some numbers, much less relevant than I thought. And then I organized things, you know, maybe an overly complex term for people who don't follow baseball. I don't even really follow baseball. I don't know what I'm saying. But the idea of a fastball versus a curveball, and what I mean by that is just like, what's your go-to, just like I'm spamming this move. In almost every case, it's going to be a water move. What's your go-to, you know, I need some big hits move? That's your fastball. And then what's your curveball? What are you going to off of that? You know, what are you mixing it up with? So all these numbers might seem inscrutable. Everyone just ran damage calcs versus a normal Braviary with like only normal typing. Gave it max HP, which worked out to 404. And I gave it base defense and SPDF. The reason I did Braviary is it's a normal type with the exact same defense and SPDF stat. So, you know, also go Birds. We're going to win the championship this Saturday. Just you wait. Sunday. Yeah, we're going to win the championship this Sunday, boys. Just wait. Anyways, so if you see something like Amistar doing 407 to 481, you can see that it's OHKOing a Braviary, which is pretty crazy calc. And anything over 202 is going to be a 2 at KO. Like this Mega Swampert here, we see is an easy 2 at KO. So again, this is a lot of like raw numbers, and it actually, again, you know, it's one of those things where I did it because I thought it would make things very clear, but it doesn't really. It leaves things pretty ambiguous because there's so many like contextual factors here, right? So if you look at just the numbers, Mega Swampert's pretty underwhelming. You know, it's actually, this shocked me. It's in the exact same numbers as a Life Orb Seismitoad. And I'll also do a disclaimer here that with the exception of Mega Swampert, again, just to keep things easy and simple and even, I gave every one of these mons calcs with a Life Orb. And, you know, that's a 30% difference. Maybe it shouldn't be too surprising, but I was kind of blown away to see the numbers are pretty much identical for Seismitoad and a Mega Swampert. Seismitoad's even faster. It also has that very useful ground typing and stealth rock. It doesn't take up a Mega Evolution slot. They're both very bulky. It has Power Whip, which is nice. I would say that Swampert still definitely has the edge with Superpower, which can kill a Ferrothorn, whereas if a Seismitoad wants to do that, they have to use a Focus Punch on a huge read. But even then, I'll say it can also run Hydro Pump Earth Power sets extremely effectively. If I'm being honest, I think the vast majority of Seismitoads I've faced online have been special rather than physical. Anyways, pretty interesting. You also have Kingdra, Kabutops, Ludicolo. I threw on Amistar. It definitely feels like the odd man out. It hits pretty crazy damage. Mantine, I've always felt as a weirdly underrated sweeper and underused. I think it was pre-home Sword and Shield. There was a brief, you know, that little metagame we had right when Sword and Shield launched. I think Mantine definitely had some fun times back then with Choice Specs, Hurricanes hitting pretty hard. Floatzel hitting the biggest damage out of all of these guys here. And it's normally running Choice Band because you're not clicking anything but Wave Crash. But even still, it's hitting 539 damage. It's so crazy. Barraskewda is definitely up there in numbers too. I think it's the second biggest physical hitter, unless I'm mistaken. And then Basculegion. I'll get to that in a sec. So Overqwil, that's the name I was looking for. Good name, actually. So with this in mind, I am going to rank these mons. I think. Do you want to go top to bottom or bottom to top? Let's do it. Let's do it bottom to top. Let's go. I think Kabutops is a very flawed one. It hits some pretty hard numbers. We're talking about like significantly more damage than a Mega Swampert, which again seems whack because it's only got 115 attack, whereas a Mega Swampert has 150 attack. That's a huge difference. You have to keep in mind the 30% boost that Life Orb gives to these attacking stats is pretty massive, so it's going to work out. But it has a way worse move pool. It's so frail. You're running Life Orb in these cases, which is like very disingenuous because you do 5 attacks and now you're at 50%, whereas Mega Swampert can keep coming in and keep threatening. It's so aggressive in that sense. So Kabutops I'm going to put here. I think Ludicolo is of a tier with it. I like Ludicolo a lot because it has a curveball. Again, maybe weird jargon for it, but it has a curveball that can hit a common wall to these Swift Swimmers, which is going to be a water type. So I really enjoy that. On a similar sense, later we're going to be talking about Kingdra. I'll throw it in B tier right now with hell. It has access to Choice Specs Hurricane. I love that myself. Kingdra can also, similar to Seismitoad, run special and physical sets, but I think the special sets are vastly better. Draco Meteor, Hydro Pump, Hurricane. That's great. And I should really know this. I'm like 80% sure it got access to Flip Turn this generation too. So there's that pivot ability too, which is great. Mantine, I think I'll throw here too. I really actually like it. I think that Choice Specs Hurricane is really good. It also has access to a lot of utility, which none of these other mons do. So with Mantine and Bulk, which is nice. In Mantine, you can be running utility like Boots. So not Boots, well, you're forced to run Boots actually, which is a downside. What I meant to say is like Defog, Haze, Roost. I think you can run Toxic in some of these sets. Like it does have utility, which is nice. It's not just a one-note Swift Swimmer. However, it's obviously its offensive power is not the same. It's not. It's a pretty limited Swift Swim sweeper. Of these guys, I don't really care how you rank it. I would put. Oh, I'm stupid. I should remember his name. Dreadnought. Dreadnought, I think, is a clear tier below these guys. Maybe a C-. I don't think he's quite in this range of like literally inconsequential, but he's definitely not as good as the ones on the left here. And Amistar, same thing. It's a pretty good Shell Smash user, but it's pretty limited, and I feel like you're forced to run choice specs on all these guys, which on almost all these guys, I feel like you're kind of forced to run a choice locked set, which really limits your flexibility. Not Kabutops, and you can make the same criticism about Kingdra, but I won't. So yeah, we'll do that. Kingdra I will keep in B. Then I will do Seismitoad. Seismitoad versus Kingdra is a really tough question because in terms of flexibility, Seismitoad does so much for you. You get Stealth Rocks, you have a great typing. Again, having a ground typing is fantastic because you swap in your Pelipper, somebody goes for a Volt Switch on you, predicting your Pelipper, and then you go right out to your Seismitoad and you're all set. It also has access to Power Whip, which again is nice and helps break down your walls. We love that too, but I think I'm going to keep you here. And then we'll go to the A tier now. So I think these three are kind of head and shoulders above the rest right now. Of course, this is modern Floatzel. And the order of which you could make a lot of different arguments in different ways here. In terms of damage numbers, the Mega Swampert is going to be very low compared to everybody else. Even Barraskewda with a low base attack, it's probably running Choice Band most of the time. It's not regretting it. But Mega Swampert does have the advantage of being able to switch moves. So you click Waterfall on the Pokemon in front of you, but oh no, a Ferrothorn comes in. No problem, I can just click to my superpower. Or if it ends up being a Toxapex, great, no problem. I'll just click Earthquake. Whereas if you do that with a Barraskewda, it really throws off your whole game. You can pivot for sure, but I think Mega Swampert is weird, right? Because in the generation of which I'm talking to, where Mega Swampert was a frequent sweeper, it didn't have flip turn, but now it probably will because Swampert gets flipped. I'm not going to get into that too much, but in the tier through which we know it, it did not have a pivot, unlike Barraskewda. So, and Floatzel is very different from the two as well, in that it has no flexibility whatsoever. It's kind of the opposite of Swampert, and Barraskewda is the in-between. There's no flexibility, but those wave crashes be hitting hard, man. They're so hard. Its curveball is the worst of all of them in the sense that it's 136 damage Ice Spinner, which is terrible coverage all in all. Not helping at all versus a lot of types that are going to wall you, like a Toxapex, whatever. So it's terrible at what its specialty it's great at. Everything else it sucks at. And the recoil damage is absolutely significant, right? if we're talking about the life orb in this example, again, I think you're running choice band 90% of the time. But in this example, it KOs the Braviary. Actually, it OHKOs the Braviary, but it takes 50% damage between the recoil and the life orb damage. That's insanely impactful. So it feels a bit disingenuous because these two are sweepers in the purest term, weather sweepers. Whereas Floatzel I see as much of a more of a wall breaker that happens to have Swift Swim. And I guess, excuse me, it often covers liquidation for coverage too. So maybe I should be showing that in there and then judging it according to that instead of Wave Crash. But I'm gonna go with my gut and put it at the bottom. And maybe you'll be wrong and regret this later, but I feel like Floatzel hasn't really proven it yet. And between Barraskewda and Swampert, I might give this slight man. You know, it's different too because Barraskewda had to deal with more advanced walls to deal with it, I feel like, than Swampert did. I mean, no, actually, that's true. Not true. Both generations, the big things that were keeping it trouble were Ferrothorn and Toxapex, which doesn't really change based on Sword and Shield or Sun and Moon. So I just gotta nut up and make a call here. I am gonna go with my gut and go to Swampert because I remember Swampert just feeling like a problem. I remember playing Sun and Moon OU and being like, oh my god, these brain dead rain abusers, it's so lame. Whereas Barraskewda, I never quite felt the same way. So this is, I think, my preliminary list. Kind of went through it with you guys right here, and actually maybe I would order it. Oh, I really like Mantine, but I think I would order it. These two are close. These two are not close. I think I would order it like this. I didn't decide on these two either. I think I go with Kingdra just because it's special and I like the Draco Meteor and Hurricane coverage. I think, okay, yeah. Now I think this is my list. Let's talk about the two new Hisuian Pokemon coming in. What's it called again? Overquill. Overquill is in this or this zone, to be honest. I mean, it's running Poison, Dark Stab, which is nice coverage to have. But as a result, it means... I mean, what I think about with Rain is I think about just the overpowering, like, wall-breaking ability. Like, similar to the Floatzel, certainly similar to these top ones, where it's just like, I'm about to throw this huge water attack at you with, you know, it's Choice Banded, it's Stab, it's Rain Boosted. Like, if you don't ever resist, you're probably getting to a KO. That's the nature of all these things, right? Is, I don't know if there's a single one, even Overquill, which had the weakest, you know, fastball in this sense, is still to it KOing the normal Braviary. Now, Braviary isn't much of a wall, but you get the idea of, like, you need a wall for almost all of these Swift Swimmers, right? So the question is just, what else do you bring to the table? And this one doesn't really do any of that well. So anyways, I don't really love Overquill for this. I'm sure it'll be a fine Pokemon. Intimidate looks like a better ability for it. Its stats look okay. Basculegion, I mean, it's a different case. And also, actually, I'll mention here, Basculegion's a tough one because on Smogon, it says it doesn't get it. It says it's not going to be getting Swift Swim. It was the case in Arceus, but it's weird. Some sites are saying that it's a Swift Swim. Some sites aren't. I will say I put this question out on Twitter, and Freezeye said, you can quote me on this. This is exactly what he said. You can look it up on my Twitter account. Freezeye tweeted at me and said, you can quote me on this. He's 100% getting not getting Swift Swim. I guarantee it. I stake my entire reputation on it. That's exactly what he said. And Basculegion, if he did, though, in the theoretical whatever world where he does get it instead of the other excellent ability, Adaptability, as that Water Ghost typing, you guys probably saw it in the calcs below, but the waterfall things are higher than Mega Swampert, which is crazy. There's also Last Respects, which is like so good that even the Water Stab isn't counted as the fastball here. Like, it's utterly insane. Last Respects is gonna be crazy. People are gonna see that. I'm gonna get myself into trouble by saying what I'm about to say. People are gonna see this Last Respects calc and be like, well, of course, Last Respects is what should be banned. It never should have been Houndstone. I knew it, blah, blah, blah. I still don't think that's the case. I think, like, think about Tinkaton Hammer. Tinkaton Hammer is not a broken ability or move at all. I think we can all agree on that. It shouldn't be banned. The Pokemon running it, no. Tinkaton is the Pokemon Gigaton Hammer. That's easy to mix up. But I think we can all agree Tinkaton is not broken, and certainly if that's the case, then Gigaton Hammer isn't either, right? Well, what if we gave Gigaton Hammer to Scizor and to Melmetal? Well, both of those Pokemon would be banned. And we would go, oh, well, Gigaton Hammer is ban-worthy all of a sudden, right? No, not really. It's the Pokemon that have it, when judged by their move pool, are ban-worthy. I shouldn't have thrown that in there. I'm sure this is a nice, non-controversial video until I threw that in, but Same thing as with Basculegion, right? You have these two great abusers of a great move, no question. A plus move. But I still think it's not the move being broken. That's my hot take. I think it'll probably be an unpopular take, but whatever. But regardless, if Basculegion was allowed in the game, it would be in this tier as a Swift Swimmer, right? Like you would have unbelievable wall breaking ability with just a life orb here, multiple move sets. You know, you can even throw in a curveball and they'll be like, oh, it's a Swift Swim, I got to be careful. And then it ends up being adaptability, last respects, choice band, and then it hits you for like, you know, that much damage instead. So I think it's very clearly in its own tier here. But as I said, I don't think it's getting the move ultimately. Regardless, that's my tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if you like this video, if you want to make me see something regarding chlorophyll, regarding sand rush. I'd actually like to make a video of this regarding whether setters. It'd be a more in-depth video on the fewer amount of setters, of course, but we can talk about Torkoal versus Pelipper versus Tyranitar, which is really interesting because then you're talking about the merit of each weather. And you go, okay, well, you know, on paper, you know, Abomasnow is a whatever quality of setter, but hail is really bad. But now we have snow now, and Tyranitar, sand is maybe not as good of a weather setting as Pelipper's rain, but Tyranitar's a way better Pokemon. So how do we evaluate that? I actually don't even know going into it. So anyways, if you like the idea of that or any other sort of speed boosting weather ability, let me know, because I always love these tier list videos. They're always fun to make. I'll catch you guys next time. Take it easy.